coordinated effort here. I looked in Javari yesterday. Remember, Javari is that site where you can report your resources and what you have available. There's a few agencies that are continuing to update that, and we ask that you please get in there and update your resources. That isn't, you're no longer required to report your PPE usage on that site, but just keeping your resources up to date, your number of ambulances, number of personnel. Please note in Javari if you have anybody out on quarantine, those kinds of things that would be used if we had a situation where we needed to look for help throughout the state. It gives us a good idea of the resources that are currently out there. That staffing waiver is still in effect, and if your agency gets to a point where they need a staffing waiver, please make sure that you utilize that. PPE distribution, we put out in the past that you needed to use the form that was on a link that we gave you. In talking with DES yesterday, they said that form is no longer required, but that it is required that you work with your local DES with any PPE requests. They have, they being the SEC at the state level, has distributed PPE to all of the DES throughout the state. And so your local DES is who you need to contact if you are running low on PPE and you cannot find it to order it anywhere. There are reusable gowns available, and I'll let Francine talk about those a little bit because she's done some research on those.
This is just a couple of the companies that are selling reusable gowns. Red Ants Pants has ramped up their production of them, and Sims in Bozeman, the fishing store, they sell the gowns. Red Ants Pants is like $34 a gown. Sims's are $50 for the lightweights and like $75 for the heavyweights. You definitely want a lightweight gown, but they sure do hold up a lot better than the disposable gowns. And the disposable gowns now are running anywhere from $8 to $10 a gown. And so it doesn't take too many times to make these reusable gowns pay for themselves. And with them holding up better, I think it gives us better protection.
There was also a program that DES put, has the fields where you can report on each call how much PPE was used, and I encourage you to have your folks reporting that. There is a report within the image trend call, how much PPE that Hannah built for you to run your weekly burn rates and your weekly totals. So we try to make that a little bit easier for you to figure out how much you're going through. The Battelle Critical Care Decontamination System is still available, and that's for cleaning of the N95, so you can reuse your N95s. Please take advantage of that if you're running low on your N95s, or even if you're not, it's a good way to make them last longer, because it kind of seems like we're in this for the long haul. There's a link there for you to enroll in the Battelle program so that you're able to send your N95s in to have them cleaned, and then they return them to you. This is just a graph of our daily call volume. And as you can see, if I can point it here, this shows from 2018 through to current. And you can see where we had the big dip in March, April, May, started to come back up in May, and now we're really back up to our baseline for call volume. In fact, it's a little bit higher than it was during this same time last year. So we get everybody off of mute, maybe we can hear from the local level what's happening and what you're seeing as far as call volume and the types of calls that you're running. It's been a lot of trauma in the last couple weeks. Been going up quite a bit, a lot of highway fatalities happening. It seems like just the last couple days, a lot of violent crime happening. People are just a little bit out of sorts with everything that's been going on. Okay. PPE recommendations have not changed. There's not been any update at the CDC site, but if you need to go back and look at what they're recommending, please use the link that's provided there. You know, when you initially go on scene, please go back, you know, make sure that you're just sending one person in with a face mask, gloves, and eye protection to do the initial risk assessment, initial assessment of the patient. And if it's somebody that's showing signs and symptoms of respiratory illness or fever, then you'll go to your full PPE with gown and face shields for the whole crew. Make sure that you're masking your patients. All your patients should be masked. You just don't know who is and who isn't positive at this point. So please continue to be diligent about masking your patients. If you're running low on surgical masks, maybe you can, maybe your community is willing to make you some of the disposable or non-disposable face shields, you know, the cloth ones that they're making. And you could use those for your patients. I don't know how easy it is currently to get the surgical masks. I think anything that's medical grade is going to become more difficult to get. So consider using the cloth masks for your patients.
It's important to note that in King County, that if even the patients that were confirmed coronavirus, they were able to keep their responders at 0% contracting coronavirus when they used an N95 mask, gloves, a pair of safety glasses, and a gown. And so it protects you really well if you wear it. So you just need to make sure you're putting PPE on if you're doing that close contact patient care.
Please continue to document your coronavirus cases within ImageTrend. The fields are there for you. There's a field that you can either choose confirmed by testing, COVID-19 exposure to confirmed patient, or suspected no known exposure. So please make sure that your folks are using those fields so that we can continue to monitor that. Some other available resources are our webpage at the EMS and Trauma Systems webpage. We continue to update and add new material to that. Also, ems.gov has a very good site for resources. You know, the other thing that I didn't mention here is the possibility of you being asked to do testing. I think there's a couple communities that EMS has been used as a resource for the drive-through testing. You certainly can do that, and if you need information on how to conduct the testing or any policies on that, we have some that have been shared by other agencies. There's also good information on ems.gov regarding EMS and being utilized for the testing. The other thing that you might consider is talking with your county health department about being involved with the contact tracing. There may be some utilization of EMS for that as well going forward. Jim, did you have something to share?
From a national standpoint, separate than what you're dealing with locally right now, well, I shouldn't say separately, but from the national level, I sent an email out to services, and I think I sent a couple out over the last weeks about a movement in Congress to start funding treat in place. EMS around the country has been recognized as the front line, and never has there been a time where the concept of community paramedicine, community integrated health, been more important. People do not want to go into the hospital. They do not want to go into the doctor. If anything, if there's anything they can do to be treated at home and not have to go in, that's what they want. So even if you're not a community integrated health program, which we have 6 in the state working right now, even on a daily basis, services are finding out patients do not want to be transported. As you can recognize or imagine, that's a huge financial hit to lose a 4th or a 3rd year your income because you're only getting paid to go take a patient to the ER. That has generated more intense scrutiny about the process. CMS constantly talks about how they would like to pay for treatment in place, TIP, but the statutes don't allow them to. So the move nationally right now, and with legislation in Congress and movements to from several congressmen and a lot of all the national associations, the NEMT, the AAAs, the fire chiefs are moving towards making that a statutory change in the country. That's important for even on a daily basis if we can start getting reimbursed for that. But also that's been one of the bigger barriers of community integrated health, community paramedicine is how do you get paid for that? If that gets fixed at the congressional level, at the CMS level, that would be a huge thing. So I did send out something quick, I think a week or two ago about the potential for legislation to be introduced, and letters to your congressman was important if you wanted to do that. I'm not in a position to tell you one way or another as a state government official, but that was sent out, and I sent out an update just a few days ago about how that's going. So I heighten your interest in being engaged with that if there's the opportunity to be involved with letter writing or emails and so forth, because it's huge for the EMS industry. So take a look at that. Otherwise, locally, as Sherry said, this is going to be a long haul. This is not over. This is going to be for the next year. We're seeing more and more where the public is relaxing and thinking, let's go on. We're seeing more and more where EMS is relaxing and going on. That's very troubling. We've had several services that really get surprised by patients that are not supposed to be COVID, but then don't end up being COVID. And the service ends up being really stressed with what to do with a small rural volunteer service, and everybody is in the house taking care of what is supposed to be a cardiac patient, but is also a COVID patient or a possible COVID patient. And you shut down the service in a small community for a few days till you sort it out. That's just troubling, and it's so easy to fix. With every patient, you should be wearing a mask and eye protection, and if there's any sort of realization that this could be a COVID patient, or even if you don't know, a gown and a mask and gloves and regular PPE protects you. As Francine said, if you're using protection, you're pretty safe. So do not relax. We're trying to keep that word going out as much as possible. We're also dealing with at least one county where the recognition and the notification to the ambulance service and other responders that they're responding to a COVID location is not being honored yet. The governor does have a directive relaxing some of the HIPAA requirements and then actually allowing, and I think even directing public health nurses to let dispatch know where the COVID patients are in the community. And it's then dispatch's responsibility, if responders are going to that location, to say PPE is advised or something like that. It doesn't have to be so frank as saying you're going to a COVID patient, but PPE advised is one of the terms out there that lets you know to be heightened in your awareness of where you're going and what you're facing. We're having some troubles with some public health and counties dealing with that. And if you're having that problem, let us know and we'll try to deal with it as best we can. But that's another sort of concerning issue for us here, is to make sure that you're protected as possible. But again, do not relax. It's just, this is going to be going for a long time. And you get a small community we had to deal with a couple of weeks ago where the two main providers are quarantined for days waiting for the test to come back because they were worried about, they were sick and worried about one of them being COVID. That your community, big or small, can't deal with that. It's just, you just can't shut down your service and don't do any transports because you haven't been careful. That's my message for today.
And Francine was going to share with you about some UV lights that are available for decontamination of the ambulance.
Currently, Columbia University last week just come out with a study, and they found that UV light, especially at the 222 nanometer and the 254 nanometer wavelengths, which most of the bulbs out there, that's what their wavelengths are, kill 99.9% of the COVID-19 when it was aerosolized and the UV light was on. So if you are all looking for an inexpensive way to further decontaminate your ambulances besides the actual wipe down, we have put together, they're called a LED corncob bulb, and they come in anywhere from 58 to 100 watts. You can buy them on Amazon or whatever. They have a timer. You can actually put those in your ambulance when you get done with the call and turn them on for anywhere from 30 minutes to 60 minutes and probably kill 99.9% of any of the aerosolized COVID-19 so that your ambulance is clean and fresh for the next call. So I think that's an inexpensive way to further make sure that our ambulances are decontaminated. One other point I'd like to make is that if you haven't educated all your family members on being careful out there with COVID, I know in other agencies nationwide, they were finding most of their infection in their providers was actually coming from family members that would go out without masks or would go to parties or different places and then come home and then the provider was getting sick. So I think that not only do we have to be diligent with ourselves, we need to keep our close family members very informed and keep them diligent in helping protect us so that we don't get sick.
Do you see Dawn on there yet? I'll go ahead and unmute Dawn. There he is.
He's gonna have to unmute himself.
Dawn, can you unmute yourself?
There he is.
Oh, there you go. Don Whalen was going to share with you his experience with the Missoula Emergency Services and COVID-19.
Yeah, so we found out Friday night that one of our medics tested positive for COVID-19. More than likely got it through the fire department here in Missoula. Health department contacted us Friday night at about 10 minutes to 5, so that didn't help. They ended up quarantining, 14 of our employees for 14 days. Out of 70 employees, it's been a pretty major hit. So we had contingencies plans back in March, which I had to call Jim on. So right now we're okay, but we may have to use non-EMTs or EMTs from the volunteer services to help us drive if we get to that point, as well as we've reached out to some of the surrounding services for medics if we need them. Right now our employees have stepped up huge. We haven't had any gaps in the schedule, but just one person wiped out 14 of our crew members. So we have 14 on quarantine. We don't know at this point if any others have tested positive. They all got tested on Monday and nobody's got their results yet. So it's real.
Thanks, Don.
That's all I got, unless you got some questions, Sherry or Jim or whoever.
Can you open it up to everybody now without it going crazy?
I am going to try unmute everybody. Well, looks like you have a question or something, you might have to unmute yourself. But if you have questions or comments, this is an open forum right now.
Good morning. This is Daniel Benyon, Beagle County Ambulance. Can you hear me?
We can, Daniel.
We can,
Go ahead.
Dan.
All right. We found out it was helpful when we test the person that is suspected, as far as the employees goes, through the county health department, and they prioritize that test, and we usually get it back in 48 hours. So if you haven't done that, and you're waiting for, the 2 weeks, that could be a long time. So that's my suggestion. As far as the UV light, we have been looking for them, and the only one that really looks like they're going to work, there's the expensive one. The one you get on Amazon are mostly toys. And that's my experience of it. And we have been using ozone in the back of the ambulance, ozone generators, but they take half an hour, 45 minutes. And so that's another consideration. It's a lot cheaper than UV light, the medical grade UV lights. That's all I have.
Thanks, Daniel.
Sherry? Hey, Sherry.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Don again. Just so you know how that works. We don't get a choice. They're off for 14 days. And then before they can come back, they have to have 2 negative tests at the end of their 14-day period within 24 hours of each other before the health department will release them. So when they're gone for 14 days, they're gone for 14 days.
And that's people that have had known exposure.
Yep. They've
Wow.
got it. And that's probably maybe just a Missoula County thing, but they're not coming back for 14 days.
Oh,
Sherry,
This is Mary Jo. Oh, go ahead.
Sherry, this is Phil Asham. I was just wondering, we just happened to have a case that we ran on a COVID positive that was COVID in April and has tested negative. How do you classify them? We went full PPE and everything, but there's also some contact with law enforcement that weren't PPE'd. Are they considered COVID cured, or if they haven't had an antibody test?
so are they testing positive again?
No, they weren't tested positive. They were tested negative twice, but it was about a month ago. So would they just be considered non-COVID?
What did you transport them for?
It was for heart issues.
I'm gonna say err on the side of caution and use the gown and stuff.
Right.
I think overall they're considered negative, but nobody knows what we don't know yet about COVID. So I would err on the side of caution and use the gown and mask and stuff. And
Right.
just-
EMS went in because she was a known COVID, and so, or we considered her as known COVID, but there was some law enforcement there that weren't, and so I don't know if they should be run through, or they should have ran through the county health department, or how. I don't know how that works, I guess.
Do you know if they retested that patient?
I don't.
I mean, that would seem like that would be way up high on the list of things to do, would be to retest that patient to make sure that they're not positive again.
Okay.
And maybe do just temperature checks. Have
Yeah,
those folks do temperature checks and
we went through our COVID worksheet, but other than that, we ran into a couple COVID positive tests after they didn't hit anything on our COVID check sheet. So they're calling them presumed positive, but they don't really count them as positive. So I don't know how that works either.
yeah, I guess we just go back to saying we just have to assume everybody's positive initially.
Okay.
And mask the patient and wear appropriate PPE and and as far as exposure, it's dependent on as far as what you have to do after an exposure, it's dependent on the level of PPE that you wore when you were exposed.
We've kind of gone, and luckily we've had our call volume's not high enough that we have been okay with N95, so we just kind of gone to them straight away.
Yep.
So.
Probably a good practice. And are you using the Battelle system
I'm sorry.
for reusing? Are you sending them in for cleaning?
No, we're we haven't been.
Yeah, it might be something that you want to start utilizing, and
Okay.
that's for everybody. Use your N95s and then send them in for cleaning. So
Okay.
that you keep a supply. You know,
All right.
run too fast.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And your law enforcement should be working with public health when there's any concern. They're the central point of what to do, how to do it. Recognizing in some of your really small counties, those people are really stressed, and between keeping track of COVID and contact tracing and stuff, they're really busy. But try to utilize them as the source of information. The PEP program downstairs talks to them regularly and
Okay.
tries to help them when they need some help. So that's a good source of information.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if there was an antibody thing that was carrying over that they could really prove.
No, the antibody tests are being used by usually medical personnel. They'll test them if they're working in facilities. Is one of the higher priorities. But even the antibody test has a fairly high false positive, false negative, maybe I should say. So
Okay.
you just got to be careful.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody on the phone using the Battelle system? I'm curious to see how that's been working. I think hospitals and stuff are using them pretty heavy because they're burning through stuff pretty regular, but I've not specifically heard of an EMS service using it yet.
Mary Jo, did you have something?
I did have a question, and I think you've kind of probably answered it with the other questions being asked. But with the contact tracing, they're putting here in Dawson County, they're putting people in quarantine for 14 days. But those people that are not testing positive but are in quarantine, we have no idea who they are. So err on the side of caution, I've heard, but eventually, I mean, we can use the Battelle system, but eventually we're going to be running out of gowns, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how much these smaller services can afford to keep buying the PPE. I have ordered quite a lot through the state, through DES, and have gotten it, but I think they're pretty exhausted on the gowns. What we've been getting is those KN95 masks. Pretty much is all that they've been sending, and then cloth masks, of course. So I guess is everybody that they come in contact with, a positive COVID patient comes in contact with, they're traced through the health department, but are all of those people then quarantined in everywhere, or is that just here in our county?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't. When they're doing contact tracing, they're finding mostly what they're doing, I believe, but we'll talk to PEP to be sure. They're letting people know that they've been in contact with a possible COVID patient. I'm not even sure they're getting to the point of saying who that is. They're just letting, they're doing contact tracing, letting know they may have been exposed and advising them to do temperature checks and watch their symptoms really close. I don't know that they're quarantining everybody for 2 weeks. I don't think that's happening, but they're giving them a heightened awareness that they may have been exposed. They shouldn't go out and do things they don't need to do. They should wear masks, must wear masks is probably the better word if they are out, and letting that people know so that if they get any symptoms or if they have any temperature changes, they need to let public health know right away. And so I think that's what the contact tracing process is, but I'll find out. It's a good question.
Okay.
In Don's case, he has a crew it's high risk. It's doing patients, and as he said, they're quarantining them because they cannot, the company and the public health can't let one of our frontline services having a positive patient going out there and spreading out even more. So I certainly with an EMS service or something like that, or hospital employees, that their sense of caution is much higher. But I think for the general public, I think it's an awareness that they may have been exposed and they need to watch really close.
Yeah, and what the current recommendation is when you have any EMS call, is to have one person go in initially, and we're talking just your everyday call, not somebody who's showing signs and symptoms of fever and cough and those types of things, but just your everyday call that you send one person in, you mask the patient, and the person that goes in is in a mask and eye protection and gloves. And then once the initial assessment and risk assessment is done, that determines the level of PPE that the rest of the crew needs to be wearing. So if it's a patient that's not showing signs and symptoms, is not a respiratory patient, is not a fever patient, then you wouldn't necessarily have to go to the gown and the N95. Although there are many agencies that are just routinely using N95s now on all patients, but you wouldn't necessarily have to do that if the patient has no signs or symptoms of COVID. And in that way, you would be able to extend your PPE a little bit. It's not like every call everybody has to be in a gown and face shield and N95.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the supply of PPE is going to be tough for a long time. Unfortunately, it's harder for you because of the other states that are really having trouble, and you can imagine all the resources they're burning up just trying to keep up or try to get ahead of it. But yeah, it affects you guys though, even though we're sort of a lower risk at this state. It's going to be an issue for a long time, and we don't have a solution. We just keep trying, and we'll keep trying to make sure you get stuff given to you if you need it, especially if you run out. Let us know. We will find some source somewhere.
Yeah, Highway Patrol's good. We've used them once to move PPE to an agency that was out. So if you run out or you're critically short, don't hesitate to pick up the phone, and we'll do what we can to get you some. Also consider those, as far as the gowns go, consider those gowns that are being made by Red Ants Pants and Sims, those reusable gowns, and maybe getting enough to issue one to each person on the crew, and that may be a way to help with the gown situation.
Any other questions or thoughts? Well, thanks guys for getting on today. We haven't been on the line for a little while, but we recognize that things were getting a little bit less, more lax out there. People are relaxing a little bit too much, and we wanted to get some more information out, get any new information we can out, and appreciate you getting on. We will keep doing these on a regular basis, depending on what's going on out there. But if you have any questions of us, certainly feel free to ping us at any time, and we'll try and help you if you have any issues and problems. Otherwise, be careful this weekend. It's going to be a big deal this weekend.
A busy weekend, and I think we only have 23 on the call today out of over 200 agencies in the state. So talk to your neighboring agencies. Make sure that that they're being safe as well. I think we got a lot of people not paying attention. Well, thank you for being on today.
Thank you.